Most women, when men cry in front of them, it's very uncomfortable.
This clip shows a segment from a podcast called Valuetainment Media, where the host interviews these 6 women where they talk about men's emotions and feelings. I wanted to dive into this clip to kind of show how they talk about the ideas of toxic masculinity and misandry. And these are 2 subjects that have been increasingly present in the past recent years. To give a little definition of both of these topics, toxic masculinity is known as a set of behaviors and standards that are stereotypically set for men that are regarded as negatively affecting them and their mental health. As for misandry, what this is basically having a prejudice against men in a negative way. So basically disliking all men just because they are men. The channel Valuetainment Media is a decently known channel with about 25,000 followers, and in this clip, they're kind of promoting both toxic masculinity and misandry. So now that we have a good little definition of them both, let's dive right into this video and see why exactly they're promoting it. In the clip that I just showed in the beginning, she's basically saying how it's very uncomfortable to watch men cry, or in her case, to watch her past relationships and friendships cry. She then continues by saying how being in a relationship with them and watching them cry gives her the ick. Now, ick is a word that's been being thrown a lot recently on social media, and what it means is that it's like a turnoff. If someone that you're interested in romantically or sexually does something that turns you off, it's considered to be an ick. And in this case, she's seeing that watching men cry is like an ick. This would be an example of toxic masculinity, as she expects the man in her relationship or friendship to be the rock and to be tough. Watching the man cry contradicts her stereotypical beliefs and prejudices she has towards men, which is why she says it gives her the ick. This is only one example of many, many standards that are set for today's men. This first one that's being talked about is the fact that they have to be tough, they have to be the rock, they have to basically show no emotions. They can't cry, they can't feel remorse, they can't show their sadness, or else this will be seen as not masculine, and it doesn't conform to these toxic masculine standards. This is a problem that takes a toll on men and their mental health. This is what a lot of men grow up with, and they are always told that they need to be tough, they need to be strong, and they need to provide for their future families. I found a segment that was made in an article published in 2023 made by Makaina Monument, which was called Causes and Consequences of Toxic Masculinity. To read it off, what it says is, it is important to address how masculinity continues to exacerbate mental health issues despite efforts by society to eradicate harmful stereotypes and preconceptions about gender-defined thinking. A toxic masculinity mentality holds that asking for help or direction might make one appear weak. It also involves a mentality that ignores psychological distress because admitting to stress can come off as a weakness. When emotions are disregarded frequently, a person learns to completely shun them. They also learn to hold their emotions inside rather than express them, which leads to internalized discomfort. I really like this part because it covers a lot of issues that come with toxic masculinity. To summarize it, it basically states that toxic masculinity makes it very hard for men to kind of be able to deal with their emotions and what they feel. It makes it difficult to differentiate one emotion from another, and especially to externalize that and talk about it. Young men have these values and standards forced onto them where it states that they need to be strong, they can't show emotions, or else that shows a sign of weakness. They are taught to hold in their problems and their issues rather than express them, which leads to desensitization and internalized discomfort. These are problems that could lead to depression, anxiety, inappropriate emotional expression, a lot of issues that affect men in the long term, not just the short term. In this next part, she talks about how her grandfather died and her dad didn't even cry about it. The host, who is a male, then states that as beautiful and that he's like the rock for the family. While it is true that having someone to be your emotional rock is very helpful and nice, it is very detrimental to that person's mental health when they are always the person who is this so-called rock. The host, who again is a man, says how it is beautiful how he is the rock for the family. This shows how men have been brainwashed to believe that this is the way that things are. This is how they have to be. They have to be emotionalist and tough, and they have to put everyone before themselves. Another big problem is social media. Social media provides platforms where people can express how they feel as much as they want, and even anonymously if they want. This gives people a great platform to express opinions that might not be so widely accepted. In this article I found by Mike C. Parent called Social Media Behavior, Toxic Masculinity, and Depression, they talk about how social media and technology plays into the spread of toxic masculinity. An interesting point that was stated was how online interactions are a potential fertile ground for the proliferation of toxic masculinity. Many online environments are anonymous, with usernames taking the place of actual names and users themselves being generally unidentifiable. Considering that a large majority of today's youths are very active on many different social media platforms, this puts them extremely at risk of being influenced by opinions such as toxic masculinity or misandry. The article then states that even when online interactions are not anonymous, such as on Facebook, asynchronous and non-face-to-face interactions may be more disinhibited, more volatile, and more prone to toxicity than live in-person communication. The fact that expressing your opinions on social media poses almost no physical risk makes it a lot easier for people to spread their opinions, even if they may be questionable. Podcasts and videos such as this one proves how people feel more comfortable and at ease stating their opinions when they're behind a screen. They don't only feel safer because they are behind a screen, but people who do not identify as being a man or a male feel like they almost have a right to talk about these toxic masculine opinions that they have and misandrical opinions that they have. In another article by Paul Nathanson and Catherine Young called Misandry and Emptiness, it states how underlying the attitude of those who condone misandry, they often hide behind the anonymity that pseudonyms confer on bloggers, is a perverted notion of justice, which makes it synonymous with revenge. Men have used misogynistic stereotypes to serve the economic and political interests of men, according to many people in the past, so that women may now use misandric ones to serve their own economic and political interests. What this is stating is that since men have previously used misogyny for economic and political gain, now women are allowed to do the same rather than fight for equality. They want the roles almost to be reversed. This is used as a reason to spread misandry and toxic masculinity. This way of thinking is often misunderstood as feminism when it is actually just misandry and the ideal that men should possess traditional traits and values. To conclude, this video talks about how men should possess these toxic masculine traits, such as not crying, showing no emotion, being the rock. The message that this video is sending is that if a man does not possess these traditional values and traits, then they are lesser than a man who does. As people, we should encourage everyone to be able to show their emotions and to talk about it, or else holding it in can really greatly damage someone's mental health and their well-being.